Do you want to see what $1 million a month coaching business actually looks like? Well, you're in the right place. On this channel here is the daily updates of us going through building in public our business from the 1.2 million that we did last year in the coaching business to this year. Our goal is to scale to $1 million a month. And we're really just documenting our process of what works, what isn't working, and everything along the way. The style that we're doing these daily updates is we're going to do a YouTube comment Q&A. So all you need to do is comment on any of the videos, ask a question about your specific business, and we'll do a little Q&A focus around how we can help you. We're also going to be building and strategizing in public and also documenting the growth across YouTube, podcasts, and all the products that we sell. So for this video today, I want to talk about our strategy for lead generation in 2026. And it really falls under two camps. We really have it on either side. One is cold outreach, and this is our more leveraged channel that we're using to be able to grow and scale the marketing. And then over on the right-hand side here, we have really what we call fame as a business model. So over here, this is what we call a leveraged marketing lead gen strategy, also known as paid. And this is what we would call a stabilizing strategy or free organic, right? And so on these two camps, essentially over here, we pay about $33,000 a month to send cold emails. We currently send about 3 million cold emails a month. We get around about 4,500 to 5,500 people that reply positively. Call that a PR, a positive response. And then from there, those people will come in and book a call. We typically get anywhere from 8% to 10% of people that are going to book in a call from there. So we book around maybe 400 to 500 calls. And a lot of the time we'll get a lot of these calls to cancel or be pre-canceled based on just revealing price. So we tell people up front, hey, yeah, our product's $15,000 for the year, right? Here's how it works. Here's how we get you booked on podcasts every week. Here's how we give you stability. And, you know, if people are immediately repelled by price, that's good. We only have people coming through who are qualified on the call. And then over here on the other side, which is the fame as a business model approach, inside of this approach, it's really about publishing regular content. We're doing a combination of YouTube videos like this. We're also doing a combination of podcast interviews. And then we're also doing, as well as these daily updates, we've got regular YouTube videos, which would be, you know, one a week, very highly curated. Now, I want to talk about like why we approach it this way. And so the most important thing that I think is really key to understand is that a lot of businesses, if they're coaching businesses, and this is exactly where we got stuck for a really long time in our coaching business. If you have this chart, right? And over here, you've got revenue, and over here, you've got time. Typically, you've got, you know, 0, 10K a month, then you get up here to 30K a month, and then up here, you've got the 100K a month that we all want to get to. By the way, it took me 9 years in my business to consistently get to 100K months in this, you know, in this business today. It sometimes takes a while for you to figure this stuff out. What tends to happen is that most people bob along at this really low level, right? Not really making a lot of revenue at all. And then they get an offer, right? And so they get this spike where they get an offer clear and people start to resonate with it. And then they do a launch, right? And then they go up again, and then they go up again. And they have this kind of like revenue roller coaster, right? And we've absolutely been on this revenue roller coaster before. But a lot of people, they get stuck below 50K a month. And the biggest reason that they get stuck below 50K a month is that they're actually not paying anything in terms of marketing. There's no paid. And the reason that I'm kind of talking about this is that a lot of the time you can grow organically, but what it lacks for most people is it lacks leverage. And when I say leverage, really I just mean something where you can pull with a certain level of weight that you get a bigger return on the other end. So think of a seesaw, right? Or if you're trying to lift something heavy with a big pole, you can have less input on one end and get a higher input on the other end. So a lot of people do is they get to that 50K a month level, and they've done it typically organically, and they're missing the ability to turn up their marketing. And so the important thing to understand is that there is a cost to all of the things that you're doing. You're either paying with your time or you're paying with your dollars, right? In terms of getting the output that you're looking for. And so one of the easiest ways to figure this out is actually to calculate where you are currently. And so what you can do is you can say, okay, cool, how much time am I spending on my lead gen strategy right now? So for example, we spend about 10 hours a week producing our content. And then I also probably spend maybe 3 hours a week just kind of like in a planning phase in terms of the content itself, right? And so you've got 13 hours. And typically when we're doing that amount of content and we're putting the content out there, you know, we might bring probably a similar similar output back, right? Let's say we bring 50K a month in terms of revenue into the business. What you can do there is you can do 50,000 divided by the hours that you put in, and that gives you your hourly rate. So in that example, that would be $3,840 an hour. Now, when you calculate your hourly rate, now what you can see is, well, here's what my time is worth. And so what you typically are looking to do with any paid strategy is to buy back your time so that you can focus on activities in the business that are going to be able to get you either a better value return, or you can just put significantly more volume behind it. And so, for example, I've only got 15 to 20 hours a week that I could actually give into my business if I wanted to, because I have to run the business, I have a life, I want to go surfing or rock climbing or just hang out with my girlfriend here at home in Costa Rica. We don't want to be working all of that time. And so typically the reason that you look to have a more leveraged channel is so that you can either get a better return or do significantly more volume in terms of what you're doing. So if you haven't done this, this is a really good idea for you to calculate this right now. How much time do you put in? And then what does that money bring you at back? And then work out what your hourly rate is. So the pieces of content that we do here is that, we do a daily email. We have this new YouTube series. It's really too early for me to be able to have any revenue from this yet, but that's something that I'm spending my time on right now. And then we do the podcast guest episodes, right? And all of these things drive to calls inside of our funnel, right? And then we sell people on the back end into our coaching program. And so as we're looking forward into 2026, I want to talk really quickly about what is the leverage and how we're actually going to get to the $1 million a month by turning these things up. But it's important to understand that typically the reason people get stuck at this 50K a month level is because they run out of time, or there's not enough leverage for them to be able to scale past that. There are caps, constraints that exist within that model. And typically time is a big constraint, and typically your time is going to be constrained by either the day-to-day business, right? It's also going to be constrained by things like the ability to take more sales calls, and typically it's also going to be constrained by, in terms of not being able to create enough content and turn up the lead generation strategy. And so a big part of what we encourage clients to do inside of this process, and what we do for ourselves, is that you kind of want to have two prongs when you're scaling past those 30K to 50K a month. Now, if you're actually doing less than 50K a month, you can probably just focus on the free stuff, right? And that's why we help a lot of clients do podcast guesting, because they can do it consistently every week. It doesn't take a lot of time, and they're getting in front of new audiences all the time. But if you're at that 30 to 50K level, you want to add in something that's leveraged. And then from there, the content becomes the tool that gets people over the line. And so if you think about how we're doing this cold approach, like in our business, as we're doing cold email, one of the biggest, roadblocks that we have with cold email, it's really friggin' cold, right? When we're seeing people and they're looking to come inside of this process, it's very, very cold. It's literally somebody that's never heard of us before, and so the typical funnel process for our cold emails is that we'll send an email. Typically there's about 2 or 3 emails that get sent out, and we're saying something along the lines of, hey, we have a network of 75,000 people. Do you want to get booked on shows? From there, those people will send a positive reply. They'll say, yeah, I'm interested. Let's find out what's going on. And then from there, we're then going to send them a link, to get booked in on the calendar, right? And they're going to pick a time that makes the most sense for them in terms of the meeting itself. So this is a fairly standard funnel. We call this a minimum viable calendar that we send people to. Now, bearing in mind, when people send that positive response, we also will send a couple of follow-up emails, and a couple of these 3 follow-up emails are automatic. But then we have 2 team members, Carly and Margaret, and Carly and Maggie, they're actually going through and they're sending custom follow-up as well. And so if they see a prospect, they're going to send them a message and content. Now, one of these is just a reminder, but another one is actually sending them into content, and it's sending them into our YouTube and our podcast episodes. Now, why do we do this? Well, the big goal here of being able to have so much content is that it actually becomes a nurture tool. And so the content itself that we're producing becomes trust as an asset, right? It's a trust asset. Imagine somebody's watching this video and they're hearing me talk and they're hearing me strategize about how we're scaling this, right? But what it also does is it nurtures the prospect. And so typically the more time that somebody spends listening to you and your brand, the more likely they are to buy. And the goal here is actually to get bingers. the reason I'm doing these daily updates is that a lot of people are going to come in, listen to one of these, and they're going to go look for another video that grabs their attention and listen to that. It's going to create a binging cycle. Plus, it's also helpful for me just to document and create content every day. And the more of these I do, the better I'm going to get at the process. It's also very low friction for me to create a video like this. I just boot up YouTube and talk about what I'm focusing on. But the goal here is bingeability. Like the more bingeable we can create this content, the more likely somebody's going to come in and just want to go and like consume a metric shit ton of this stuff. And so when we look at that funnel, this is the typical flow. Now, this is a big part of the reason that we're creating a lot more content today, and we're really going pro with the way that we produce content, because what we're looking to do is when we have a lot of these people who are cold, we want them to come and get into our content process. And the way that it was explained to me recently by one of my mentors who's doing a lot more content today than I am, is that if you think about traditional marketing, right? Traditional marketing is a funnel, right? You have the top of the funnel, you've got the middle of the funnel, and then you've got the bottom of the funnel. Tofu, mofu, bofu, right? And at the top of the funnel is where you attract people, your marketing, your ads, these are our cold emails. In the middle of the funnel is where you nurture people, and then the bottom of the funnel is where you convert people, right? And so the conversion at the bottom of the funnel is typically trying to get people to book a call and buy. The nurture in the middle of the funnel is typically content. And then the attract at the top of the funnel would be things like, our cold emails that are going out, our podcast episodes that are going out. If you're producing short form content, God love you. I hate social media. You won't see me anywhere near that inside of the process. But those are the three levels, right? Now, what's kind of interesting about the modern way that this is kind of being done is that it's very much no longer a funnel. And the way it was explained to me recently is that it's actually more of a spider web. And so if you think about it, think about the last time you bought a product. Did you, go through a traditional funnel process? Did you go in with an ad and then land on a page and then immediately take the action that you were supposed to? Chances are probably not. Right? We still come in the top of the funnel, but what we're trying to do with the secondary piece here, with the content piece on the right-hand side, is that we're actually creating a web. And so they're going to consume this piece over here, and then they're going to consume this piece over here, and then they're going to go over here, and then back over here again, and then over here, and over here. And the more content we can get them to consume in a short space of time, then the more they've binged us, and the more likely they are to be able to take the necessary action. And so all of these content pieces that we have inside of the lead generation strategy that we're using, every single one of those videos, those podcast episodes, right? They've got a description, and inside a description, there's going to be links and call to actions. And so rather than us needing to be very heavy in the pushing into the bottom of the funnel and trying to get people to buy, the goal of the content is really just to have that there when people are ready for it. And so typically we're going to have call to actions to our offer. We're going to have call to actions to go to a call. We're going to have call to actions to join the list. We're also going to have call to actions to any other products or conversion systems we have in the process. For example, we're going to be launching a $100 workshop, later in the year, basically as a bridge for people to convert into our higher level offering, right? By having those in there. For you doing less than $1 million a year, if that's you right now, probably it's better just to focus on one product and one conversion system. That's what we followed in order to be able to get to the level that we did, right? And so that's the role of content inside of this funnel. And so to circle back in terms of the 2026 strategy here, this is the funnel that we're running with cold email. And I want to explain to you the challenges within scaling this right now. So the challenges that we're actually currently having with scaling the cold email is actually in the sales side. And so one of the challenges that we've had with sales recently is because the prospects are coming in and they're colder, and because we're also sending a lot more cold emails today, we send over 3 million of these every single month. What we have noticed is that show rate has been a little bit lower, and also the close rate has been a little bit lower. Historically in our business, we've typically had about 13 to 50% close rates, and our show rates have typically been about 50 to 60%. We've had some months where they've been 70%, but they've not been consistent enough. Now, interestingly enough, we've been able to scale the offer really well at this level. We would acquire a customer for about $2,800, and that customer value typically on day one is around $12,500 on average. And so this is nearly a 4-to-1 return in terms of what we've been making inside of the business. But in 2026, one of the things that we've noticed, and you may have noticed this in your business too, is that things have gotten a little bit harder. And so our close rate actually has dropped to 6%, and our show rate has dropped to about 45%. Now, in fairness, the reason for this is probably because we made a bunch of changes. I wouldn't say that this is a market issue. I would say that these are down to the fact that we changed how we run our sales. And maybe I'll cover this in a different video, but we now have external sales teams. So I don't run the sales team anymore. And in the last 60 days, there's been a changeover process there. And so, spoiler alert, here's a great lesson for you. Every time you make a change, there's going to be about a 20% downturn in performance, probably for 2 to 4 weeks, every single time you make one single change. And so when we brought the sales team over, there were a lot of changes that happened, and there's been a lot of negativity that's come into that. Maybe I'll do a separate video tomorrow on the tweaks and adjustments we're doing to improve that. But this is the challenge that we're actually trying to solve today. If we can solve this challenge, and then that gets a lot stronger and our return gets better, it means that we can scale the cold marketing. Right now, our cost to acquire a customer, which was usually $2,800, has actually skyrocketed, and now it's actually about $8,000 for us to acquire a customer, which gets us, dangerously close here to something that's not sustainable for growth. And so we need to fix those parts of the funnel to be able to make those tweaks and make those adjustments. Now, this is typically not something that, a lot of business people are going to tell you online, but these are just the break points inside of our business that we're noticing right now. And so typically when we work with clients, we always look to identify, well, what is the number one break point inside of your business? And then we will go in and diagnose using something we call the one problem protocol. And so the one problem protocol basically helps you identify, well, what is the cause of the biggest break point in the business? And so right now, for example, our biggest break point is that our cost to acquire a customer has increased a lot, right? If it's an $8,000 cost to acquire a customer, and it used to be $2,800, that's a 3 times higher cost, right? Because of the lowered performance inside of the funnel. And so we have to be able to figure out, well, what's the one problem that we focus on? And typically we'll do this in a 6-week period to solve that problem. And you may have noticed that in our business, the one problem that's relating to this is actually the sales team. So this is the problem that's causing the challenges in growth. And so how we're fixing this, I'll cover in a separate video, right? But we have to focus on the one problem and fix it. And so content is absolutely a piece of this, because the more content we produce, not only do we generate leads, but we are able to create nurture and trust with our audience that helps them to scale and grow. And so if you're coming in, and you're typically in a business that's doing under $30K a month, we typically will suggest to you, right, well, don't even worry about leveraged stuff right now. You don't need to do ads. You don't need to do cold outreach. Typically what you need to do to get to the 30K level is just have one offer, right? Have one way you sell it and have one form of traffic. And if you can focus on that, and typically for a lot of people that we see in the space today, the way that they're focusing on traffic and marketing is content, right? Because we've kind of shifted out the attention era into the credibility era. You really need to be credible, and that's why content is so important. And this is the power of becoming micro-famous in the niche. So I hope this is valuable. If you like this, subscribe, follow along. We're going to be doing more of these videos every single day. If you have questions about your own business, on what to do, where to focus, maybe whether you should go leveraged or paid, or should you continue to do organic, or what funnel should you be running, any business question you've got, just drop it down in the questions in the comments down below, and we'll spend some time answering those questions at the beginning of these videos. Hope this was valuable. Hope you liked it. We'll see you in the next video, guys.